brains. Hey, good morning. It's Coffee with Big Cat. Maybe. God, I needed that. Yeah, it's Coffee with Big Cat. Hey, I don't think the terms liberal and conservative mean anything anymore. I really don't. I really don't. The last sane thing government ever did is when Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton worked together and signed the no unfunded mandates law. Government can't do anything unless it can pay for it. And when W arrived, first thing he did was rip that up. And he said deficits don't matter. When Bill Clinton signs a law that says this is ending welfare as we know it, and W rips up no unfunded mandates, and Dick Cheney says, well, deficits don't matter. Well, at that point, what does that mean? What does liberal and conservative mean? I think the points are meaningless at this point. And I am not partisan. I don't agree with anything anybody says. I don't expect any of you to agree with everything I say. Because big fucking deal. People disagree with each other, right? That's not a big deal. People just disagree with each other. That happens. It's okay. Right here, you can make some comments. Yeah. Say something smart, funny, or interesting. Agree with me, disagree with me, whatever you want to do. People can think whatever they want. People can say whatever they want. That's just a fact. That said, my opinions of things, my views of things, tend to cluster liberal. That tends to be my cluster. So to the extent to which many of my opinions cluster on the left-hand side of things, yes, I'm a liberal. I'm also a pro-law enforcement liberal. Not a lot of us, but I'm a very, very pro-law enforcement liberal. And I'm a buff. Some of you know what that means. Some of you saw the collar brass on me the other day. I was never a sworn officer. I was briefly an auxiliary with the department on the East Coast. I've been a volunteer in public safety functions off and on throughout my life. Family is law enforcement and private security, and I come by it honestly, but I feel that the best sort of thing I can do for society, the best way I can serve, is to write cartoons, monster movies, and dick jokes. So that's what I'm doing. Also, I'm too blind, too fat, and too crazy to be in the military or law enforcement. So there's that. But being a buff, I kind of follow, not into sports, but I kind of follow some public safety agencies as if they were like my teams. First and foremost, the NYPD. I love the NYPD. And the more I get to know people from my local sheriff's department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the more I really like the way they think over there. It reminds me a lot of the NYPD. And I'm also a big fan of the ATF. I think they're wildly misunderstood. There's a book called, I can't remember the author, but there's a book called Very Special Agents that really kind of lays out, listen, everything you've been told about the ATF is wrong. And you've been told about the ATF is for political agendas and various things. So, very, very good book. Very Special Agents. I highly recommend that. And I've also been a big, long time FBI buff. Very, very fascinating. I think the history, international history, is largely the history of war. And I think domestic history is largely the history of law enforcement. In a lot of different ways, right? Because if you want to learn about civil rights, you learn about the U.S. Marshals Department protecting the protesters, and like law enforcement has always been involved in everything. You can, for good or for ill. So being a big FBI buff, by the way, I'm a liberal. But one of my favorite books in the entire world is Will by G. Gordon Liddy. I love that book. I love that book. And in fact, though Gordon broke my heart, because when, he was all about, guys who spilled, the Pentagon Papers, I'll kill those guys. I'll kill those guys myself, and I'll do life in prison for it. I'll do, it's like, okay, hardcore, So when Valerie Plame got outed, I went to hear what Gordon had to say about that, and he's like, oh, yeah, well, that's okay. It's not really classified. I mean, it's classified, but it's not really classified. And I was like, oh, Gordon, zealot's got to be a zealot, or they're not. And so Gordon broke my heart, but I still love that book, Will, by G. Gordon Liddy, also because I'm a big Watergate buff. So being an FBI buff, in the mid-1990s, when all those books came out, those biographies of J. Edgar Hoover, longtime director of the FBI, I read all of them, big, thick books, I read them all, and the media's portrayal of those books, all the book reviews, everything that came out about it, not necessarily the books themselves, but like all of the coverage of those books really harped on one thing, which was that evidently J. Edgar Hoover was a cross-dresser. He liked to dress in drag, and people really jumped on that. And my feeling was, it's the one thing I liked about him. That's the best thing about him. I could almost kind of forget what an asshole he was when you sort of picture him dressed like Carmen Miranda and wanting to be called Kitten. So that's where I'm going with all of this, is don't make fun of the one best thing out of something. And here in particular is what prompted this whole riff. Is this morning I woke up and I said to Karen, hey, you know that Xenu in Scientology, the baddie galactic overlord guy? She said, yeah. And I said, that's the part that might be true. People make fun of Scientology. They go right to Xenu or Xemu, depending on which notes from L. Ron Hubbard you're listening to. I think on his tape recorder when he was ranting about it, he's like, oh, Xenu is it? But I think he wrote it down as Xemu. So it's one of the two. It's Xenu or Xemu. I think it's OT3. You'll finally learn about this stuff. So keep at it. So people make fun of that. Oh, Xenu, the galactic overlord who dropped people into volcanoes from a B-52. That might be right. Like, I think of Lovecraft. Okay, Lovecraft was a writer of speculative fiction, and it's obviously all fantasy, except for the Cthulhu thing, which is like, ooh, the Cthulhu thing. Maybe don't think about the Cthulhu thing too much, because you might wake him up, and we should probably let him sleep. Let's let the Cthulhu sleep. So same with Xenu. Xenu is the Cthulhu of Scientology. Like, yeah, I mean, what's causing you problems is stuff you heard when you were under anesthesia. Come on. Xenu. So it made me think, the thing you most make fun of in some given system might be the thing that's the best about it. So it made me think about Mormonism. I haven't really thought this through yet, but as far as the Mormonism goes, Jesus came to America. Sure, but only if he was riding a sandworm from Dune. Then I can get behind this. There are people who can really find what they need in Dune or Star Wars or whatever other works of speculative fiction, and there's people can make the case that the Bible is speculative fiction. Could be, I don't know, I don't care, whatever you want to believe is fine. But I think about, I didn't look this up, but off the top of my head, I think it was the Council at Trent, 5th century, something like that, where up until that council, there were two ways to worship. You could read the books that were to become the Bible at that point and sort of view them as in a mystical way, in a symbolic way. This didn't actually happen this way, but these are symbols that you can meditate on and find peace and find tranquility with. I think the goal of religion is to inspire a tranquil sense of connectedness and to inspire ethical behavior. That's my definition of religion. Science, by the way, is determining the way things actually operate in the natural world. So if you go by those two definitions, those two things will never go anywhere near each other. Science can have no actual position on anything supernatural because it is by definition not repeatable, not testable, not measurable. So I think about those Christians who were perfectly good Christians and going to heaven, whatever that means, up until that Tuesday that the council at Trent took place. I'm not a biblical scholar. If anybody wants to argue with me with better specifics, go ahead. I defer to the experts. But up until that Tuesday, that mystical, personal approach to the Lord and Savior was a perfectly valid approach. And then on Wednesday, you were all sinners and you all needed to be killed. Not killed, but some people did go and kill heretics later on. It's the heretics that first made me kind of hear what there was to hear about Christianity, for me anyways. I've got some friends who are very, very concerned that the Christianity thing never took with me. There was never any chance it would. There just wasn't. The Christians I met when I was a kid were, to a person, evil, sick, crazy, racists, drunk. Everybody I met who was a Christian when I was young was a rotten human being, and I never wanted anything to do with that. It wasn't until I was an adult that I met Christians whom I love and call my dearest friends, who are really good people and for whom it really works, and that's all great news. Whatever you believe, whatever goes on between your ears, it's your business. That's your business. You can think anything you want, you can believe anything you want, and in fact, you can say anything you want. You really can. The only thing that counts is your actions. It's the only thing that counts is your actions. So, if you feel that Allah said you should go kill people, you killing people is a real problem, and that needs to be addressed. But your reasons behind it, again, going back to, you can think whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, and part of being able to say whatever you want is I can say, hey, that's a really bad idea. All ideas are up for discussion. All ideas are open to criticism, and the better ideas are more open to criticism. So, I'm not saying anything about any particular religion, but I am saying you can think whatever you want, you can say whatever you want. It's what you do that counts. You can say whatever you want. I think that's probably it. What a riff. God damn it. I should have stopped on Xenu is the Cthulhu of Scientology. That was probably the funniest thing I said. I should have gone out on that, but I talked past my punch, because I always do, because I'm a big cat. Say something smart, funny, or interesting in the comments. I'll talk to you later.